Time was never meant to repeat, but when Dr. Otto activates his Quantum Energy Reactor, the explosion doesn't end him. It resets him, again and again. The day restarts, and with each loop, peels back another layer of truth. Dr. Otto Maren had long believed that time was a river, something that flowed in one direction, carrying moments like leaves on a current. But that belief shattered the moment the light swallowed him. The lab was alive that morning, its sleek walls humming with energy, filled with the sense of historic anticipation. Whiteboards were layered with equations. The scent of solder and ozone still clung to the wires, and the central chamber, an obsidian cylinder embedded with glowing rings, pulsed like a heartbeat. The Quantum Energy Reactor, his life's work, stood ready. Otto, a man in his early 30s with blonde hair and sharp calculating eyes, adjusted his collar and leaned in to inspect the core. His hands trembled, not with fear, but with reverence. 10 years of theories, setbacks, and lonely nights had all converged on this singular moment. Final check complete, called Dr. Hanley from the observation deck. We're green across the board. Otto nodded, masking unease beneath his usual calm. There were risks, untested variables hidden deep within the math, anomalous fluctuations that hadn't resolved, but pressure from above was mounting. Secret government sponsors, clad in suits and silence, had made it clear the reactor goes live today. One of them, a man with a silver lapel pen and an unreadable stare, stood behind the glass, arms folded. Otto stepped back, began the countdown. As the numbers ticked down on the central display, Otto's thoughts wandered. What if this worked? Clean, infinite energy. No more oil, no more war over power. It could rebuild cities and scarcity. It could redeem him. 3, 2, 1. The core ignited. A searing pulse of violet blue light surged outward, a pressure wave flattening everything in its path. Otto's scream was swallowed by the light. And then, silence. And then, breath. He was standing again. Same lab, same cool coffee cup in his hand. Same clock, blinking. 7:42. Otto's chest heaved, his vision swam. The countdown hadn't started yet. What the? He stumbled back, nearly knocking over a stool. His colleagues eyed him curiously as he blurted out questions no one understood. Weren't we just? They shook their heads. The day began again, exactly as it had. Same tests, same jokes, same subtle tension from the observers behind the glass. And then, boom, again, the loop restarted a third time. By the fourth, Otto was quiet, watching, analyzing. He began keeping notes, scribbling frantically on the back of test logs and napkins. Each change he made, altering fuel mix, adjusting magnetic field strength, delaying the sequence, failed to prevent the explosion. No matter what he did, the reactor always surged and reset the timeline. No one else noticed, no one remembered. He alone carried the memory of failure, again and again. By the 9th iteration, Otto's face was hollow, his words brittle. It's not a malfunction, he whispered to himself. It's sabotage. Something in the system wasn't broken, it was programmed, and someone wanted this loop to hold. The loops blurred together like brushstrokes on wet canvas. Morning became ritual. Otto awoke with the same stiffness in his joints, the same blinking digital clock, the same half-sipped coffee cooling on the desk. But now he didn't flinch at the countdown. He didn't try to stop the test. He'd accepted the inevitability of the explosion. What mattered now was what he could extract before the end. Each cycle became a data run. He learned the rhythm of conversations, the angle of every camera, the precise moment when his assistant would drop a clipboard. With each iteration, Otto altered his route to the lab, stalling team members, redirecting queries, inserting just enough noise into the day to buy himself time. He burrowed into the system's core, hunting beneath the surface layer of logs, shielded behind 7 levels of encryption. It took 23 loops, but eventually he found something. A corrupted directory labeled simply -war.ex. Inside, deeply obfuscated, was a subfolder containing uncompiled fragments. Otto's pulse quickened. This wasn't a malfunction. These files shouldn't exist. Using a shell bypass script, he finally cracked the innermost layer, and there it was. A series of reports tagged with the phrase, weaponization potential. The first page showed them. If harnessed with intent, the quantum reactor can be configured to create controlled quantum collapse events within urban coordinates. The estimated radius of total annihilation 0.6 kilometers. Residual destabilization field, 48 hours. Viable for rapid neutralization in theater scale conflict. Otto pushed back from the console, bile rising in his throat. This wasn't a hypothesis. These were projections, targeted, rehearsed, war gamed. His dream of clean energy had been repurposed as a battlefield tactic. He knew now, the loop wasn't accidental. It was a failsafe. Or worse, a containment strategy. But who? Who among his team would have accessed the core algorithm? The sabotage code was threaded through the ignition protocol, buried behind real-time safety diagnostics. It wasn't a brute force attack. It was elegant, inside, quiet. Otto changed strategy. No longer did he tinker with hardware. He studied behavior. In each loop, he planned inconsistencies. A misaligned screw, a file moved to the wrong folder, a test result intentionally skewed. He watched faces, monitored reactions, cataloged every frown, every hesitation. But they were perfect. Too perfect. Until loop 38. Later in the cycle, Otto gained access to a low-level security feed on the server subfloor, an area off limits during ignition. The feed glitched once, twice, then he paused the frame. Someone moved in the background, a tall figure in a lab coat, face hidden, but their stride too confident. Not a technician, not an engineer, someone watching. Otto stared at the screen. The others passed right by the intruder, unaware. The figure lingered near the quantum governor, placed something beneath the console, then vanished behind a service panel. Otto knew now the saboteur wasn't acting from the outside. They were inside the loop with him, watching, and within the next cycle, Otto vowed they would see him watching back. By loop 39, Dr. Otto Maren no longer walked through his lab. He moved through it like a ghost hunting a reflection. Every step, every motion was calibrated for control. He had tested enough systems. Now he was testing people. And today, the trap would spring. In the early hours, Otto rerouted two auxiliary power feeds into the mainframe's access panels. He embedded a false diagnostic warning in the countdown algorithm, one that only appeared after the system passed a specific temperature threshold. To everyone else, it would look like a minor coolant misread, but to someone watching for vulnerability, it would signal a window. When the countdown hit T-minus 5 minutes, the simulated error halted the test, triggering a flurry of confusion. Otto played his part, fumbling for answers, waving off engineers, feeding concern to the officials, watching behind glass. It worked. From the observation deck, a figure in a white coat moved quietly through the back hallway, slipping away unnoticed. Otto followed. He dug through restricted zones past cooling pipes and flickering lights down into the subfloors, the part of the facility only engineers and janitors knew. Here, silence reigned. No alarms, no cameras, just the thrum of a machine built to manipulate reality. The figure ahead moved fast, but Otto was ready. Near the reactor's cooling loop junction, he lunged, tackling the stranger to the grated floor in a shower of echoing noise. They wrestled, the stranger fighting with surprising strength. Otto grunted, pinning the man's arm, and then froze. The man's face turned into the light. Scars crisscrossed his jaw and forehead, as if he'd once stood at the heart of an explosion. His eyes, once slightly clouded, were unmistakable, intelligent, haunted. It was Otto, older, weathered, with white hair, broken, but undeniably him. God, President Otto breathed. What are you? The older man didn't resist. He stared up, calm, despite the bleeding lip. I was hoping you never get this far. President Otto pulled back in disbelief, struggling to make sense of the paradox before him. I tried to stop it, the stranger said, voice rasping with exhaustion. I tried everything. Delays, corruption, tampering. But it wasn't enough. He leaned against the wall, trembling. In my timeline, the reactor worked perfectly. The energy breakthrough we dreamed of, it came true. Then, governments fought for control. One of them reverse engineered it into a localized weapon. Quantum implosion. Geneva, Istanbul, Berlin, gone in seconds. The world unraveled in weeks. Otto felt the air thicken, his mind reeling. So you came back to stop it? I had to, but the temporal window was unstable. The system wasn't built for traversal. It fractured. Instead of preventing the reactor, I trapped myself. We're both inside the loop now. Every time I sabotage a test, it resets. A failsafe. then became a prison. Otto sat in stunned silence. All the pain, the panic, the explosions, they hadn't been errors. They had been warnings from himself. But as present Otto rose, a new realization crept in. There was still one thing future Otto wasn't saying. A final truth, hidden. And whatever it was, it would change everything. They sat in silence beneath the lab's humming core, two versions of the same man illuminated by the cold, shifting pulse of the Quantum Energy Reactor. One younger, still driven by belief, the other older, scarred by consequence. For the first time since the loop began, Otto Maren wasn't alone, and yet the presence of his future self brought no comfort, just deeper questions. They combed through diagnostic logs together, rerunning sequence traces, tracing algorithm branches that had once baffled Otto on his own. The sabotage was real, but it wasn't the root cause. There was something else, a presence the system couldn't reconcile. And then, Otto saw it. Nested deep within the quantum modulation table, the readout pulsed with an erratic oscillation, one that only appeared after the arrival of the older Otto. It wasn't mechanical interference, it was existential. The reactor's quantum field had been built to maintain stability across time-space variables, but it had never been calibrated for two identical consciousnesses coexisting. They weren't just causing a loop, they were the loop. The system's interpreting your presence as an unresolved paradox, President Otto murmured, his fingers trembling as he pointed at the trace. It's trying to correct you. That's why it resets. That's why it won't stop. Future Otto stared at the screen, his weathered face tightening where realization had become an anchor, a tether. His voice cracked. The loop's not holding me hostage. It's holding everything hostage. Because of me. A heavy silence settled over them, broken only by the soft churn of reactor cooling systems. The younger Otto ran a hand through his hair, panicked. There has to be another way. We can isolate your signature, phase you out, suppress the paradox with counterwaves. Give me time. I can build something. There is no time, the older man said quietly. Not anymore. He rose slowly, each motion stiff with age and regret. I spent decades looping, watching the end again and again, hoping I could rewrite the past, spare the future. His gaze lingered on the reactor's core, but the truth is, the only way out was always through me. President Otto's voice cracked. You don't have to die. I already did, future Otto replied. The day this machine worked, I just didn't know it yet. He turned to face himself, his younger self, his dream still intact. You have a chance to fix this, not just to stop the loop, but to change what this becomes. Power like this, it was never the dream that failed. It was who we trusted to wield it. Tears welled in President Otto's eyes. What if I make the same mistake? Future Otto smiled faintly. Then I'll see you again. He walked to the reactor platform, silent as the countdown began once more. No alarms, no resistance, just purpose. As the magnetic containment chamber opened, future Otto stepped inside. A rush of energy surged as the anomaly, recognizing its paradox, finally had a solution. Time shimmered, space folded, and then silence. The alarm shrieked like wounded machines, echoing through the sterile corridors of sub-level 9. Otto ran past rows of stunned technicians, his voice cutting through the panic. Evacuate the lab, now! Confused scientists glanced between terminals and one another, but the urgency in Otto's tone, something beyond protocol, beyond drills, sent them moving. Chairs toppled, clipboards clattered. The countdown timer on the control panel flickered not with ignition codes, but with a new sequence. 2 minutes and 47 seconds, 2 minutes and 46 seconds. It was counting down to collapse. Otto moved with purpose, overriding lockdown safeties as he passed security consoles in the observation chamber. Red warning lights pulsed like veins under skin. The reactor core no longer thumbed with energy, it shuddered. Inside, future Otto stood at the center, motionless, arms relaxed by his sides, his body pulsed faintly, quantum instability bleeding through reality. He was unraveling, cell by cell, held together only by sheer will and paradox. He looked through the glass at Otto, their eyes locking for the final time. A nod, and silence. The containment chamber flashed. There was no roar, no outward blast, just a bloom of implosion, soundless, graceful, terrible. The center folded inward like a collapsing star, and then, as if the universe had blinked. Sublevel 9 was simply gone. Otto opened his eyes. The morning sun streamed through his apartment window. Birds chirped outside, indifferent to what had been, what almost was. There was no alarm clock buzzing, no clipboard waiting, no countdown ticking beneath the surface of the day. The loop was over, but the world felt different now, not because of what had changed, but because he had. He stepped outside, blinking into the warm light. His lab coat fluttered gently behind him in the breeze, but he no longer wore his old ID badge. That man, the one who had walked toward glory, blind to consequence, was gone. In the weeks that followed, Otto rebuilt, quietly, patiently. The new design was smaller, modular, a quantum stabilizer meant for decentralized energy grids, unable to weaponize, unappealing to governments. He destroyed the old schematics, backed nothing to cloud servers. This time, he will not let ambition write checks the future couldn't cash. And most importantly, he didn't work alone. Every team member was chosen not for status or clearance, but for integrity, transparency, and heart. No shadows, no secrets, no men in suits behind glass. Still, he carried something no one else did, the memory of a man with scars etched not into flesh, but into time. A man who had lived 1,000 failed tomorrows, so another could live one better day. A man who had looked into the abyss of consequence and stepped forward anyway. Himself. As Otto set the new prototype gently into its housing, he paused, closed his eyes, and whispered, "Thank you." The machine hummed softly, not a roar, not a weapon, just light. And this time, it was enough.